Ankara, you can see Adire, one in European countries and all that. I can't even overstate or rather understate our contribution in music, right? When it comes to Afro beats, when it comes to Fuji music, when it comes to things around global music, right? So we're there. So you can see artists winning the Grammys. You can see Nigeria is on the stage. So it contributes over $1 billion annually to the Nigerian economy. That's why we want to focus on this. That's why we want to push this out, right, across these three industries. So what the fund supports. So there are three categories, or largely three categories this fund supports. So first off, it's the technical expertise, which is the most important thing. That is what this fund is for. So again, remember I mentioned that we realized from our report that we had like technical gaps. So things around post-production, things around finalizing and finishing work are exported abroad, right? Rather than using Nigerian talent. So what we want to do, or what the fund wants to do is, yes, there are VFX artists, there are sound engineers, there are post-production editors in Nigeria, but maybe you cannot afford them, right? Or you have a product in the pipeline or a project in the pipeline, and you need technical talent to finalize that project, but you cannot afford it. Then the fund is for you, right? So again, a lot of you who are in the sectors would know what technical expertise you need, right? So again, the fund will also support production. So things around DRM solutions, audience analytics, so content delivery, also digital assets management, post-production technologies, and also in its sense, right, materials that are directly tied to the project. Emphasis on directly tied to the project. So I'm just going to give an example here, right? That if you need maybe like a digital asset for a project that you're already working on, and it's going to cost a certain amount, right? Let's say for an editing software that you already have in the pipeline for a project, you would now definitely put that as part of your activities in the budget as something in the production support tally of some sort, right? So again, technical expertise is what's needed, but right, in that technical expertise, we understand that there will be need for production support, right? So things like that can be put in your proposal and can be put in what you're giving back to us to say, okay, you need the funding for this and this, right? The third thing is the give back activities. So the fund itself, right? Yes, we want you to have the money to finalize your production, but we want you to also embed talent in Nigeria, like I mentioned. And you would have to embed two creative talents, minimum of two creative talents. So between 2 to 5 creative talents for each product. So these creative talents themselves, right, would then go on to do activities for you. That's finish up your project with their technical talent, right? And while they're doing that, they can also contribute to the ecosystem by saying, okay, are there startups in need of my expertise where I can do design for them, where I can do this and that. And in those cases, the fund would cover the cost of those give back activities. I can answer questions around that later on the call, right? If you have questions, but I'll just be moving on to the next slide. I need you to note, right, that the fund itself does not cover overhead costs of your existing staff. If you have staff already that you're paying their salaries, general administrations or operations, it does not cover that. Remember, this is a technical talent gap that we want to fill. You have a Nollywood movie you're currently working on, and you don't have the money to pay for video editing to finalize that and publish it, right? So that is what the fund is for. I just hope I'm able to clarify that. Moving on, the co-investment model. So how the fund covers your gap, right? So basically the fund covers the hard costs. So project owners basically contribute the in-kind support to the mid-career creatives and all that. So the hard cost is the technical gap and the technical skills that we want to cover with the fund, right? But you, as a project owner, would need to prove ownership. And proving ownership includes ensuring that the mid-career creatives are paid, right? Ensuring that maybe you can provide transportation where necessary or where needed, ensuring that they have an ethical workspace, right? Not just any workspace, so an ethical workspace. You need to also provide mentorship time because we understand that you're in the sector, you're a fashion lead, you're the head of a fashion brand, you know things in the industry, you've learned over time. So we also want these people that are attached to you, that's the mid-career creatives, who will be working on your technical projects, right, to also learn from you. You can also provide things like meals for them. You can also provide things like HMO coverage and health coverage and also working equipment for them. Now, what the fund will help you cover, or what the fund covers, is 3 funding models. So the first tier is its core project grants. So this is for early stage or smaller productions, right, with a clear, specific technical gap. So basically, if you're an emerging studio or if you're an independent creator, if you're building your first high quality pipeline, you need to understand that, yes, you can come on board, but you need to have like a technical gap that you're filling, and you need to be able to embed 2 mid-career creatives in your project. The second tier is growth project grants. So basically for developed projects with established operations. So maybe you're a fashion house that's established already, or you're a movie studio that is established already, with a proven track record and a capacity to deliver high scale, a large scale placement. So you can place between 2 to 5 people in your projects. Right. The third thing is collaborative grants. So this is for organizations who want to collaborate and work on a creative project together. So we understand that 2 creative studios or 2 creative houses can come to collaborate and work together in a sector to produce something, right? So for this, right, multiple organizations working towards a shared output or a broader ecosystem impact. Now, who can apply? So to apply, you must meet all the following criteria. So first, your project must be based in Nigeria and across this industry. So that's in film, fashion, or music. 2, you need to have a specific technical gap, right? That's currently being maybe outsourced abroad, or maybe it's impossible that you can do it in-house. You can't do it in-house. You don't have that talent, right, in-house to fix that gap. So what the fund does is fund that technical gap for you so that you can be able to finish your project and push it to production. The third thing is you must be a registered company, studio, or label, or a creative entity in Nigeria. The fourth thing, right, is you can attach, right? When we say you can, it means for you to be able to attach, it means you have a structure, right? So either a virtual structure or a physical structure where you can embed 2 to 5 mid-career creatives who are already skilled. So these are not people that don't know the work or they're coming to learn, right? So they're already skilled, right? But they still need more mentorship in the industry, right? And you need that technical gap. So it's basically a relationship that works, right? So the next thing you must be able to commit at least 1 give back activity carried out by the people you hire. That's the mid-career creatives. So remember I said that what we'll need from you is to kind of give back to society and give back to the creative economy, right, in general. So what we want you to do is, if there are startups, if there are creative houses that need supports as regards various things which I'll go into later, right, then you basically push that give back activity into your project so that your mentees can take that on and at least provide some support to the ecosystem. The next thing is you must ensure that your project commences between now. So it might have started commencing, right? But you must be able to finish your project between now and January 2027. The other thing is you would submit monthly progress reports and also financial records to Tech4Dev. And also you must comply with UK Nigeria Tech Hub branding and communication standards. Now, the mid-career creative placements. Remember, yes, the core idea of the project, of the program rather, is to fund the talent gap, right? And that talent gap is covered by mid-career creatives. So these are people who already have 2+ years experience, who are not entry level, right? So there you would need to place a minimum of 2, a maximum of 5 in your project. Who finds them? So basically, the fund does not go to find these mid-career creatives for you. You have to find them. You understand your technical gap. You already know what you need for your project to succeed. So all we're doing is giving you the money and ensuring that the milestones in that are tracked and you're making use of that money. But you go on to find whoever the technical mid-career creatives you want on your project are. And you'll be submitting their CVs alongside the application that you're going to be sending. The next thing is what you provide, right? So you're going to be providing mentorship, you're going to be providing learning, right? And also in-kind support, like I mentioned earlier. So again, these mid-career creatives, yes, they do have the skills, but they don't necessarily have that industry learning experience, right, that you have. So the idea is, yes, we're placing them with you and they're working to cover your technical gaps, yes, but in that process, they're learning, right? Again, you would also need to submit all the CVs of the creatives that will be coming onto your project in the application. So now the give back to the ecosystem. So I've mentioned this before, but every project basically enables at least one give back activities where the mentees carry it out. So not the organization itself or not the project, but the mentees embedded in the project. What the project and the fund does is now support the mentees to carry out the give back activity. So they would use the skills and resources from the project to support maybe small businesses or startups in Nigeria, just so that we're ensuring that that impact trickles down to the larger ecosystem. So again, all give back plans are subject to the steering committee's approval, just like the application forms, right? The acceptable activities under here would be knowledge sharing sessions. So basically verifiable master classes or workshops. This can be virtual, right? Or if you can host a mini physical session, right, which you feel you can cover and bring creatives on board, then that's fine, right? As far as it's a verifiable, impactable knowledge sharing session that tallies with the industry that you're working on and the project you're working on. So the second thing is pro bono tech services. So basically, if you're creating digital flyers, banners, doing maybe like footage editing and all that visuals for startups, the idea is, yes, there are a lot of small businesses that are struggling in Nigeria, right? And there are a lot of businesses in the space that don't have access to these facilities, right, that the project or the fund does, right? So the idea is we want to trickle down that experience to the rest of the ecosystem. Another thing is also community workshops. So again, open, accessible skill building workshops. So workshops that are basically tallied towards industries. So basically places that people can learn, right? And people can upskill themselves. So it can be 1 day, 2 day, 3 day crash workshops, maybe virtual, right? Not so you would have to think about that and also planning around what your give back to the ecosystem would be. I wouldn't tell you what that would be. You know what that would be. Another thing that's acceptable under this phase of the project is the sector learning content. So if you're doing maybe case studies, if you're doing learnings or guides to maybe how to design something and you're putting it out there, you're publishing it, right? Definitely you're tying it back to this project to say, okay, under this project, I was able to publish this, I was able to push this back and give back to the ecosystem through this way. Now, how to apply? So first off, there are 5 steps to apply to the application, right? And it's a rolling application. So when I say rolling in this sense, it's the fact that as you submit your application, it's being reviewed and approved. So we're not going to wait till July 30th before we review and approve everything. So again, the faster you send in your applications, the better and the easier it is, right? just for the fact that, again, people who come first and have great ideas usually get in the room first, right? So the first thing is to go to the website, right, which I would definitely walk you through, right? You go to the website, so visit thecreativefund.ncegii.org and download the technical proposal. So you read the website and download the proposal. Then you complete that proposal because it's a Word document. You complete it offline. So you put in your project information, the technical gaps you want to fill, your placement plan. That's how many people you're bringing on the project. So minimum 2, maximum 5. Also, what that give back activity is going to be, what your budget would be, your work plan, and all the CVs of the mid-career creatives that will be attached to your project. The third step is to now submit this Word document that you've created, or rather that you have downloaded and filled out, right? You now submit it as a PDF on the same site. You re-upload it to the website, right? Or if you have technical challenges re-uploading, which is the first option, right? You can send to the email that is ascribed in this presentation. It will be shared definitely later. Another thing is acknowledgement. So ensuring that you know that we have received your email, right? So once you're done once you're done filling out your form and you've re-uploaded it to the website, you'll see a thank you message confirming that your application has been received, right? And then you would also receive an acknowledgement within 3 working days that your acknowledgement has been received by the steering committee. And then when you are reviewed and also approved, or rather reviewed, you'll now be called to the next stage for a virtual interview. So shortlisted applicants will be called in for a virtual interview once you're approved from the first stage. Once you're selected after the review meeting, you will now be sent an MOU and you will be onboarded before you start implementation. So again, the MOU would cover everything from branding guidelines to how you should work, ethical ways on how you should work with the mid-career creatives, how they're placed. It will also ensure that both parties, that's we who go into the agreement with you, and the project or the organization handling that project, to ensure that there is accountability, right? And also funding tied to each milestone. So now back to disbursement. So disbursement is milestone linked, right? So each tranche is released only when the previous milestones are met. So first of all, you get between 30 to 40% in the first tranche. When you have the MOU signed, the CVs are verified, your work plan and budget has been approved, and also your bank details have been confirmed, right? You would have, when I say bank details have been confirmed, this now goes to checks relating to your organization's viability, right, to do work in Nigeria. So I'm talking about your company registration and all that and all that. So the next tranche will now be when you fully embedded those mid-career creatives, you've started deploying the specialists for your technical gap, right? So the specialist in this sense is the mid-career creatives who will now be deployed to fix the technical gap you're experiencing. The other key thing that would make payment go through in this milestone would be the mid-program report. So again, you would have to be reporting periodically, right, to Tech4Dev and also the program team, right? So once your reports are accepted and also approved, right, you can move on to the next tranche of payments, right? Again, if you're making payments to vendors, you're pushing out payments to people, definitely these things have to be receipted. So anything in the first tranche that you're making payments for, it would have to be receipted in the second tranche for you to be able to finalize
Hi everyone. Okay, Patrick will join us shortly. So, before Patrick joins us, I would like to also just welcome some of the people that dropped their name and their industries in the chat. I was able to see some people. I saw Blessing from Enugu, and she is a film director. I saw Daniel, a music video director from Lagos, and also Taiwo joining us from Ogun State, representing Pulse of Creativity Ogun. I also saw some people asking in the chat if we are going to be sharing. Patrick, are you back?
But yeah, I am.
Section. Okay, so just to be clear, we are going to be sharing the recorded version so that you can revisit anytime. All right, Patrick, over to you.
Yeah, apologies for the breaking transmission, everyone. So, think lastly, again, all receipts have to be submitted at the final trench, and then you have to have the full final report of what's that technical gap closed, how that was achieved, and yeah, basically closing out on the project itself. So, what are the key dates to look at, right? So, again, our first information session is the 28th, right? That's today, right? So call for applications launched last week, right? And they'll be open till July 30th, which is the application deadline. So again, if you have, it's a rolling application. So it means as you submit your application, and it's reviewed and approved if at all it tallies with the program deliverables, right? Is reviewed and approved so that you can start implementing even before July 30th, right? So again, full implementation will begin after the application deadline closes, right? That's July 2026, right? And then the program is to close out in January 2027. So everyone who has a project, every organization who has a project has to have their final reports submitted before the end of January 2027, right? So if you're working on the project, ideally by December, latest January, you've closed it out and you sent your final reports by the end of January. So I think first, the next thing on the agenda, I would like to first introduce our funding partners and the administrative partners. I know I did make that introduction briefly, and just to start. And I would like to introduce Ms. Oinkan, Ms. Oinkonsola Akintola Bello, who is the country director for UK Tech Hub, to just come and speak briefly on UK Tech Hub, the work they're doing, and also basically the Creative Fund project and why they wanted to do the project or why they wanted to support the project. Hi, Oinkon. Good day.
Hi everyone. Apologies, I can't turn on my video. The bandwidth is not great, so it'll break. But I hope everyone can hear me. So as Patrick said, my name is Oinko, and I'm the country director for the UK Nigeria Tech Hub. And the UK Nigeria Tech Hub is part of the Digital Access Program, which is funded by the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office. For us, one of the things that is really important to us is how do we grow the digital ecosystem. And people forget that the creative ecosystem is sort of embedded and a very strong part of the digital ecosystem. Because if you think about selling products, you think about storytelling, right? How do you tell stories? It's creatives that tell those stories so that customers then consume the products. But I think sometime last year we were thinking about how we sort of support some of the gaps that we were seeing in the creative ecosystem. And when we did sort of a mapping, and after that mapping, we had this sort of idea around, okay, there's a lot of technical gaps that are outsourced or under sort of is it underutilized or understaffed, and how do we sort of support that part of the ecosystem? And I think that's where this project came from. We're just really passionate about growing those technical skills so that there will be less exporting of these skills and more of this talent is sort of retained locally, or some of that, well, less talent and more values, right? So more of the values retained locally, right? And so local creators and creators can get paid for doing these things. And we realized that if people didn't have hands-on experience, they wouldn't be able to do that. And that's basically what this program is really supporting obviously the initial creative that's developing their project, but also bringing on board people that might not have the opportunity, and just sort of giving them that chance to grow their portfolio, and work in sort of on proper projects. So I think that was the reason why we decided to do this project, and I'm just really hoping that people take advantage of it and sort of learn as much as they can, and scale as much as they can. So yeah, that's kind of it from me.
Thank you very much, Rincon, for the brief remark. So yes, I think the next item on the agenda is the FAQs. So we'll be asking questions. So first off, I think I would like to go through this list, just in case you have these questions in mind already, right? And you need them answered. So first, if you want to know if this is an open call, yes, the call is open. It was open on the 20th of April, rather 22nd of April, right? And it's going to be open till July 30th. So again, it's on a rolling basis. So rolling basis means immediately you send in your application, it's looked at, you're called for the second stage of the interview. And then if you pass that stage of the interview, you're going to be funded, right? So again, we do not wait till July 30th before we look at your application. So the second question is if you can apply if your project has already started. Yes, you can. So we understand that some projects, right, might have been going on for months. Maybe you even got stuck because of that technical gap, right? Or the fact that you did not have the money to conclude the project. So again, this is looking So this is looking at, so this is basically looking at covering that specific technical need, right, that your project has, that's that gap that your project has actually faced, right? So can you apply for more than one project? Yes. So this question is a very plain question and it's going to get a plain answer. So you cannot apply for more than one project. So it's one application per organization, right? So maybe if your organization wants to do something in film, music, or fashion, you pick your strongest idea, you pick your strongest project, right? And you push it forward for the application. So another thing is, do CVs need to come with my application? Yes. So all applications must be submitted with CVs. So again, you need to have the CVs of all the of all the mid-career creatives you're going to be embedding in your project, right? You need to have them submitted as you're submitting your application. The next question is the fund outside Lagos and Abuja? Yes, it is. So it's open to everyone in Nigeria, right? So again, it's a targeted fund to Nigerians. So your project needs to be in Nigeria, your organization needs to be in Nigeria.
Right. Now, who's
the other thing is, does the fund cover salaries of existing staff? So yes, this does. So if you have existing staff, so basically people who have that technical capacity, who are working on a project and want to help. So again, that no is an oversight, right? So yes, you can use the fund to cover salaries for existing staff, right? The next thing is, what is the technical gap? So again, it's a specific role or resource you cannot do in-house, or you're trying to do in-house, but you do not have the resources to finalize it, right? So again, let's say if you want to do VFX production for a movie, right, you do not have the money to finalize that, or if you don't have access, right, to push that out, right? So that's when I say access here, I'm talking about maybe the last software for post-production, or maybe the technical capacity to finalize with including the software and all that. Definitely, you can add that as a technical gap and you can apply, right? The next thing is, why is give back mandatory? So again, this is an ecosystem investment, right? So it is linked to, right? That's the third tranche of your payments will be linked to the completion of the give back activity. So again, yes, we understand that the technical gap is the main focus, but we also want this to trickle down to the entire ecosystem. So basically looking at creatives, startups, and see how this can also benefit them, right? Again, can the grants cover equipment? So yes, if it is tied to the funded project. And equipment in this sense is not, oh, I want to buy camera. No, the fund is not going to fund that, right? Or I want to buy a guitar for my studio. No, the fund is not going to fund that, right? So the fund would only cover first directly anything the technical gap needs. That's I'm talking about maybe payments for salaries, stipends for that the technical mid-career creatives you'll be hiring, right? That's number one. And also two, softwares that would be needed or assets that will be needed. When I say assets, I'm talking about digital assets that will be needed for you to complete the project and also conclude the give back activities, right? Are software licenses eligible? So again, I've answered this question just now. So yes, they are, but only when they're directly essential to the project production. So again, you would have to state this, how essential they are, why they're essential in your proposal, right? So the application form you're going to be filling, you're going to be stating all of this. So what if my project underperforms or you don't meet the quota? So again, remember the disbursements are milestone based. So there are certain things you need to do at certain milestones for you to get the next tranche of payments. So again, disbursements will pause if you're underperforming, and also funds will be relocated after like a 14-day notice, right, to any other project that is willing to complete, right? Who reviews the application? So there's an independent committee, right, who assesses on like the relevance, the gaps that you're putting out, and also the placements, and also give back feasibility. So how feasible is your give back activity? Also, why do mentees do the give back and not the organization? So basically, we want learning to flow from the people who are practicing it, right? So yes, the project itself gives you the funds, right, as an organization or as the project, right? So what that project will now do with the funds is, yes, we're covering our technical gap with it, but we also want to help the ecosystem, right? So we would help our mid-career creatives. So the people attached to you, right, would now go on to help the ecosystem. So again, we want learning to flow from all angles. So from the project angle and also ensuring that that learning is trickling down to the ecosystem. So, again, how does this link to the Nigeria Creative Ecosystem Growth and Innovation Initiative? That is what NCEGII stands for. How does it link to the Nigeria Creative Growth and Nigeria Creative Ecosystem Growth and Innovation Initiative? So basically, that's the name of the research. That's the name of the project. The research in 2024 came under. So remember, I mentioned that this project directly originated from our findings and from the gaps we found in that research, right? And you can also get access to the platform, which I'll definitely be showing you next after the FAQs. So I think, Promise, what I want you to do is help go through the chat. If there are questions I haven't answered here, right, that are in the chat, please, can you point them out and I can answer.
All right. Thank you so much, Patrick, for that very detailed walkthrough. And I'm sure that everybody here now has a clear understanding of what the Creative Fund is all about and how the application process works. Okay, so the first question here is, someone asked if we can explain the grants range for each tier. That's for tier 1, tier 2, and 3. and also how Tier 3 can be structured.
Okay. So the grants range, right, it's the same across board, right? Again, it's not necessarily the tiers that matter, but the project scope, right? So what your technical gap is, what you're trying to cover, right? What you're trying to solve, not necessarily the project tiers itself. But I would give a rough idea, right? Again, it's tied to the project scope, so everything can change and funding can change, right? So it's between £2,000 to £5,000, right? Just for notification, yeah, just so that you understand what you're applying for or what you're trying to cover with your technical gap, right? Again, it's largely scope related. To answer your second question about the collaborative fund, so two organizations, right? Let's say you've been working on a movie project, right? As two movie houses, or as a music studio, you've been working on an album, right? And you can't necessarily complete it because there's a technical gap, right? So basically, you both apply to say, okay, this organization is in charge of this, who has been working on this particular part of the project, right? And we need them to continue this or this, right? So both organizations in this sense would probably have to, not probably, would have to embed those mid-career creatives. So organizations like that would take on between maybe 4 to 5 mid-career creatives, right? Just because it's a larger circle. So again, for you to be coming as two organizations, it means you're trying to run a big project, or you're trying to achieve something that's big, right? And if that's not the case, right, definitely you can still apply as an organization. But again, it goes back to what I said earlier, that the project scope is the most important thing, right? What are you trying to achieve? What's the technical gap you're trying to cover? And how can that fund help that technical gap, right? So I hope I've been able to answer that. Promise, next question.
Okay. All right. Okay, so the next question here is, does it include non-profit and limited companies to receive the grant?
Sorry, Oyinda's hand is up. Oyinda,
Oh, okay, yes.
yeah, hand is up. So
All right, okay, you can go ahead.
Hello, good morning, everyone. The program manager for the UK Nigeria Tech Hub. I just wanted to dial back a bit to the question regarding the range. I think it's very important to state here, and it's in the application form which Patrick spoke about, was that, you know, in your application, there is a budgeted line item. So I think it's more important, when you said the scope, it's more important that that scope is broken down, because the range it's per project, it's what's the right word? It's deciphered, like the project code deciphers how much can go into it. So it's very important for that aspect of the form to be completed and completed properly, so that decisions can be made around that. Just wanted to, you know, dial up on those aspects. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Oyinda.
All right, thank you, Inda, for that. So, okay, we have a question here from Donald. He asked if this includes non-profits and limited companies to receive the grant.
Yes. So again, it's project focused, not company focused. That's the grants, right? So if you have a project that directly ties to any of these industries and fits the eligibility criteria, that's the technical gap that you want to close, and you can verify that you're trying to close that technical gap, right, and push something out of production, then definitely you can apply. So it's not just for creative houses or for creative spaces, right? So it's people who have projects, right, in the creative pipeline, right, that can flow through. Yeah, I hope I've been able to answer that.
Okay, so Blessing also asked if for films and documentaries and short, okay, she asked if documentaries and films and short films are supported by the project.
Yes, and you are very encouraged. to apply, please. If you have documentaries and short films, please do. Please apply.
Okay, I think this question is also more like in line with what I just asked. So the person asks if this extends to web drama series or telenovelas, or also does this extend to projects that haven't started, like stalled projects due to lack of fund for continuation?
Yes, so it does. As long as you can break down that technical gap in your application form, then you can apply. Again, it's everything around these three industries we've mentioned. So film, fashion, and music, right? So if you have a project in that space, right, if it has lagged due to funding in the past, if it's something you have in the pipeline that you're trying to achieve for the future, definitely please, you're encouraged to apply. And that goes for anything on the web, goes for even your maybe final productions on things like even YouTube, right? So just ensuring that, yes, you have that technical gap that you want to push out, right? And that scope is being covered accurately, and we can understand what that scope is on our end. So yeah, that's all you need.
Okay, someone also asked, I think we've answered this, if we can apply if the project is still at the early development stage.
So again, right? Yes, but again, it's tricky. So yes, you can apply, but the way the application form is stated, and again, I would walk you through that, right, immediately after the Q&A, right? So the way the application forms are broken down, the questions you would have to answer would largely relate to the technical gap you're trying to cover. So again, if you're able to prove, right, that that gap exists, right, and there's a challenge in getting that funding or in covering that gap, then definitely you would be moved to the next stage and you'd be considered for funding.
Okay, so someone also asked if creative departments in tertiary institutions are eligible to apply if they have eligible projects.
Yes, please. Again, this project largely accommodates young people because we understand young people are in the creative space a lot, and a lot of these young people are in universities. So please, universities, university creative houses, creative hubs, creatives in universities, please go ahead and apply.
Okay, so before we move on, I also have a follow-up question from my end. So the application deadline is July 30th, right? So should applicants wait until the deadline before they start submitting their application, or how should they go about it?
Oh no, so don't wait. Ideally, if you have your application ready and you have your mid-career creatives, the CVs, the people you want to bring on board next week or this week, please send in your applications as fast as possible. Because again, applications are on a rolling basis. Rolling basis means as you're sending them in, we are reviewing and selecting. We are not waiting till the end or the close of applications to do that, right? So the earlier you do that, the better for you, because obviously it's limited funding, right? So it's not like we have all the money in the world to give everybody, right? So the faster you submit your applications, right, the better it is for you.
Okay, so we also have some questions in the Q&A section. So somebody asked if an independent filmmaker or creator with no registered company can apply.
Okay, so again, it goes back to your scope, but I would say no, right? But if you have a proven track record, right, of maybe past work you've done in the past, maybe things online that you can actually prove and verify that that's you, definitely you would be considered for the engagement. So yes, you are welcome to apply, but you now have the extra work, and the onus is on you basically to prove to us that you've achieved or you've completed projects like this in the past, and you're able, right, to complete each milestone that is being tied to the project.
Okay, so we have two last questions. I'm going to take them together because they are kind of relative. So someone asked if startup in the creative industry can benefit from this. And then the other person asked if tech startups in the creative industry can also benefit from this.
Yes. So the fund is also open to people who, not people, to projects, right, that run exhibitions, to startups, creative startups, and creative houses, right? So we understand that, yes, there's digitalization right now. There are people who use digitalization in their creative modes, right? So definitely any creative startup is welcome as far as your project, right, ties within the scope of what we're trying to achieve. So there's a technical gap, right? And you can also embed these mid-career creatives in your program, right? So ensuring that they can be placed, they have work to do, and then they're taken care of based off the agreements in the MOU that we would be signing. Yeah. But short answer is yes. Please apply.
All right. Thank you, Patrick, for that. So for now, we don't have any more questions. I believe people will still drop questions before the end of the section. So yeah, we can just go ahead.
All right. So I think let me stop sharing this first. Right. I would come back to that slide in a moment, right? But I'd like to walk everyone through the website. Okay. So this is the website, thecreativefund.ncegii.org. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it in the chat, right? Yeah. So from this website, you can see that it tells you about the program, also the sectors it covers, what the fund covers, eligibility, give back, and all that. So first off, the project aims to place at least 100 mid-career creatives, right? Also ensuring that we have up to 5 AI integrated projects. So if your project has any AI components, you're welcome to basically apply. So ensuring that your project also tallies with the 9 months duration. So between now and January 2027, right, you must be able to apply within that period and also finalize your project within that period. Again, it's a flexible grant size and it's based off scope. So you understand that it's based off the gap you're trying to fill, that the steering committee, that's the discretion of the steering committee, would now give you available funding or would now state how much funding is needed, right? Based off also the budget you give us, right? That would definitely be considered. So again, it goes back to about the creative ecosystem, creative fund and why it came about. So basically that report and the response to that report. So you can see here the 3 industries: film, fashion, music. All this is basically just information that would help you understand what the fund is about. So again, the fund is flexible by design. Remember, there's no fixed cost, right? There's a range, yes, but there's no fixed cost, right? So again, it covers technical talent costs. So VFX artists, sound engineers, post-production editors, digital fashion designers, colorists, and also the critical technical role that your project needs, right, to move forward. Again, tools, equipment, and softwares, licenses, production materials, data assets. Again, emphasis on digital assets that are tied to the talents, to the technical gaps, right? So again, if you have like a technical gap in maybe DRM solutions or maybe like things around licenses, right? Definitely the fund can cover that, right? So again, the fund can cover things around knowledge sharing events and workshops. So knowledge sharing events would largely tie around the give back activities, right? But exhibitions and workshops definitely can be pushed maybe as a creative hub, right? It's one of the creative hubs or creative startups, maybe if you're doing exhibitions or workshops around things around the creative industry. In these industries we mentioned, right? Definitely the fund covers that. Also, the fund will also cover the give back activities and also the knowledge transfer activities, like we mentioned in the past. So the cost directly associated with the give back activities would be embedded in the project cost, right? So co-investment model, remember, we want you to also take ownership of the project. So this is not just a fund. You need to contribute to the ecosystem. So that mentorship, the fact that you're creating a safe space, a studio for people to work, also HMO and basic coverage and all that. So the ways to be funded here, like I've explained, also the requirements, walk through the requirements, just more things around the give back ecosystem, the give back system, and also steps to apply. Now, let me walk you through the application. So first, once you're done reading and you're done going through the website, right? You come here, you click download application form. What it does is it downloads a Word document for you. That Word document, you're going to fill it out. Once you're done filling it out and you attach, when I say attach here, there's a space for the CVs of the creatives to be attached to. Excuse me. So basically you attach that to the Word document, you save it in PDF, right? Then you come back and submit your application. So the application now would be, my name is Patrick, and email, and then my organization's name. Right, so you choose a file, right? Once you choose a file, you upload that file, and then it would definitely push that file to the steering committee and check for them, right? So you submit your application. Obviously, my email is wrong here, but yeah, you submit your application. Once you submit your application, we see that. So again, this is Tuesday, 28th of April, right? The first information session. For updates on what's going on as regards information, you can always go to the website later to check. So if you want to know when we're going to be hosting our next info session, maybe later in the month or later next month, you can come back to check the website to know when our next info session is. But yeah, it's pretty much about the website. I will just go back to Q&As. If anybody has questions from what you've seen so far on the website before promise, you can confirm this we close out.
All right, we have some questions here. Someone asked if the interview is online or physical after submission is approved.
So yes, so that would be online. So it'd be a virtual interview with the steering committee.
Okay, so someone also asked if there will be structured technical training programs to address skills gaps in areas like pattern drafting and garment construction.
Okay, so again, this is a fund, right? So it's not a capacity building program, right? So we're not necessarily doing any trainings here, and we're not trying to train on our own end. Again, that's left to you. If you want to do that as a give back activity to say, okay, I'm doing capacity building on certain things for people in the industry, then sure, the fund would help you support your project to do that, right? Again, the fund won't support you to do that, but support your project to be able to do that, right? So again, like you've mentioned, pattern drafting and all that. So those are gaps, right, in the fashion industry, right? So what you would do is, yes, you identify those gaps, right? You can decide to do a pro bono engagement, a workshop for maybe like a 2-hour workshop on maybe introduction to pattern drafting and things like that. So that's how to help the ecosystem and build the ecosystem. Yeah, but that's a lovely question.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sorry, if I can just give a bit of insight using that particular question, right? So, for example, if you say pattern drafting is a challenge within the ecosystem, right? That means we don't have a lot of pattern drafters. So, what the fund can actually do is to be able to, like Patrick had actually mentioned and explain in detail, is to say, oh, you know what, we need to pay this pattern drafter. The person collects some amount of money every single month, pretty much. So, but for the fund to be able to subsidize that particular person's, salary or the likes, for a particular period of time, you must attach 2 to 3 creatives within your business or your organization within that period of time. So that for us is going to be very key, because we're also looking at ensuring that the skill sets of, like you mentioned, as a pattern drafter, it doesn't just stay within one person. We're able to ensure that other people within the industry are able to pick up such skills. And just like Patrick had actually said, the people who have actually learned, the mentees or the mid-level creatives who have actually come in to learn this skill, can now be able to drive that particular skill and teach other people and give back to the ecosystem, or support other upcoming maybe creators or people within the fashion industry with this same particular skill, to be able to ensure that they also succeed. So that is the peculiarities that actually surrounds the fund in that same vein. So yes.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, Abraham, for the clarification. Right.
Thank you, Abraham. Yeah. So we have another question here. So the person asks if the scope of the project determine what grant goes to it. So the person gave 3 examples, let's say short film, feature film, or TV drama. So does the scope of the project determine what grant goes to it?
Okay. So yes and no. It depends on how well you're able to explain the gap. Again, if you have a big project, right, and there is a small technical gap, right, that is trying to that's stopping you from releasing that big project, right, the fund will cover that. If you have a small project and there's a big technical gap, right, that you need to cover, again, I'm saying this in this way because you would know what those gaps are, right, and how big or small they are, right. But again, it's largely project focused, right, and largely I would say technical gap focused, right? So than let's say how big the project is or how small the project is. No, that's not what the assessment would be on, right? The assessment would be on viability, how well feasibility of completion, if that technical gap is actually a gap, right? And how fast you can actually how well the fund can contribute to solving or closing that gap for you. Yeah.
Okay, so we have a request here. So the person asked if we could run through the scope and reporting timeline. But before I hand over to you, Patrick, I'd just like to say that this section is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with all participants after this section. So you can actually go back to revisit everything that has been discussed to check any information that you need. So yeah.
So the scope, right? Timelines are
Hi, Patrick. Can you hear me? Oh,
Yes. So
okay.
I think that, so yes, I can actually take that question. So as regards to the scope and timeline for the project, we've actually just mentioned that it's going to be very important that you apply as early as possible, so that we can be able to shortlist you and support you before. So you don't wait till, like Patrick actually mentioned, you don't wait till the end of July to be able to make your submission. Because we're going to be reviewing application on a rolling basis within this period of time, and it's also going to be very important that you take full advantage of what the fund actually covers during this period of time, so you can actually take all the benefits that the fund will actually give you to support your project. But remember, it's a project first support. So we are not funding your organization. We're not funding you to buy cameras and the likes, but it's particular project that your organization or a couple of organizations can come together, they are working on, that the fund will actually support. So what is the timeline? So if you can start your application today and you can complete your application in less than 3 days, you can submit it. The committee will be able to collate it, review it, and see where your stated needs are. So, for example, is maybe you have a budget of let's say 5 million naira. That's your actual budget. So, what you can basically do and say, oh, out of this 5 million naira, we usually would have we are paying maybe 1 million naira to a VFX expert, and we actually need the funds to actually support us with subsidizing the payment to the VFX artists, essentially. So quickly, the fund, once we are not asking the fund to support all of your budget, essentially. So you can pick specific parts of your need, like in your budget, to say, okay, this is the area I want the fund to actually support, and the fund would actually look into it and see how instrumental those line items will be to the success of your particular project. Once we have been able to ascertain what that would look like, we'll invite you for interview. We'll have a conversation, streamline a lot of these things, and once that is done, we would now begin the disbursement process. Once you've actually signed your MOU and we are good at both ends, and we agree on the timelines, and also agree on the reporting format. So you don't just collect a fund and you just disappear and come back at the end of the fund and say, oh, I've done this. We are very interested in your success. We want to be able to see how you are actually disbursing it and what are the success milestones for your project. Once that is completed, you would now be, I want to call it the Hall of Fame of the fund. That's just to show us that the fund has actually supported you to success. So that is what we, when you talk about the timelines and the scope of the project, what I've done in my explanation right now is embed the scope and timeline within that short period of my response. So over to you, Promise.
All right. Thank you, Abraham, for that detailed explanation. Patrick, are you on the call now?
Oh, yeah, I am. Yeah.
All right. Okay, you can go ahead.
Okay, so I think Abraham has covered most of it. Are there any more questions?
None for now. We don't have any questions for now.
All right. So
Most of the questions. So.
yeah. So I think if you have any more questions, you can always reach out to the strategic programs email. Right. You also have access to the website, which is down here, right, and also in the chat. Right, you can also go to Tech for Dev's social media pages, and you can get access to the website itself from there. So the idea is, again, you should be able to download the Word document, which you will now fill out the budgets, the line items, the breakdown of what the fund would cover, right? And then finally, you ensure that you're putting in the CVs. You turn it into a PDF format, right? So from Word to PDF, and then you resubmit on the website. If you have technical challenges on the website submitting, that's if you do. I haven't experienced any technical challenges so far, but if you do, please send it to the strategic programs email. I'm sure a lot of you have access to that strategic programs email. All right, so thank you all very much. That will be it from me. Promise, over to you.
I think there's a question that nobody asked, but I'm going to ask the question and also answer it. So, can I share this opportunity with my friend? And by sharing the opportunity, will it mean that I will not partake in the grants of that the fund will be disbursing? So, we believe in together we all win. So you can share it with your friend. That is how you're able. So if you have a friend circle where you're all creative, because I'm sure within the creative industry, you have circles. So do not keep the good news to yourself alone. You can actually share it with people around you. You can actually post about it on Instagram, Facebook. You can even do a TikTok and just to show people the process of how you're actually applying, and also so that people within the creative industry can be able to take advantage of this particular fund. So it's not a secret fund. We do not, I don't have, no one within the steering committee has any creative project. So it's going to be a very open process for everyone to actually take advantage of this particular fund. So please do well to, like I mentioned earlier, to submit your application as soon as possible, but do not hesitate to share with a friend. That WhatsApp group that has a lot of creators or creatives within its portfolio shared with them so they can also apply, and we all can win at the end of the day. So thank you so much for I'm asking my question and also answering at the same time.
Thank you, Abraham.
Thank you, Abraham, for sharing that. So we encourage you to feel free to share this opportunity with friends, colleagues, and relevant group that may benefit from this. And also don't forget that the application closes July 30th, 2026. However, we are going to be reviewing the applications on a rolling basis. So submit early than maybe before that time, so that I'll be able to check your application and then you're going to get feedback from us. You can also follow us on our social media, Tech for Dev, and also you can follow the UK Nigeria Tech Hub on all social media platforms after this section. Thank you all for joining, and we look forward to receiving your applications. Have a great day. Thank you all. Bye, everyone.